the movie, you were anticipating that it's very difficult to please all of the people on the planet, because this is such a vast audience for this. How do you deal with people, or how does it make you feel, or what would you say to people who don't like what happens, or wish it was something different? Is there a problem with the fandom that?
No, I'd say that they're right. You know, the people who love it more than anything are also right. You know, we knew going in. I was asked just, I think 7 hours ago in other countries, someone said, so how do you go about pleasing everyone? And I was like, what? Like, not to say that that should be what anyone tries to do anyway, but how would one even go about it? Especially with Star Wars. I mean, I don't need to tell anyone here, we live in a moment where everything immediately seems to default to outrage. And there's a kind of an MO of just, it's either exactly as I see it, or you're my enemy. And it's a bit like magicians. You'd think magicians would all just get along. Magicians hate each other. Now, I'm sure there are exceptions, and I'm sure someone will write to me like, that's not fair, and I hate you. And they'll be right.
Throwing shade at magicians. I can't believe.
No, but it's like it's a crazy thing that there is such a sort of a norm that seems to be devoid of nuance and compassion. This is not about Star Wars. It's about everything. You know, compassion and acceptance and allowing people to. It's a crazy moment. So we knew starting this, any decision we made, a design decision, a musical decision, a narrative decision, would please someone and infuriate someone else, and they're all right. And Chris wants to say something.
Well, no, and then your only compass, really, your only North Star is your heart and how you feel about this. I mean, we went into this movie knowing it was a love letter to Star Wars. It was a love letter to the old school kind of filmmaking that inspired George, Republic serials, Flash Gordon, samurai movies, all these other genre references that we love, and it's the stuff about Hollywood movie making that we love. It's the big mythic stuff that we love. And so we went into it sort of deciding that is what we wanted the final episode to be. You know, if you're making the series finale of The Sopranos or The Wire, you want it to feel like The Wire, you know? There are places where you can move the film language forward, and I think we did that. I think JJ always wants to do that. But we also wanted you to have 2 last hours with these people that you love and to really have it feel like Star Wars thoroughly. So those were real decisions that we made, in spite of knowing some people would want us to be innovating more, some people would want us to be innovating less, but we knew, one thing we knew, and this is the last thing I'll say, is we were going to put Leia in the Jedi Pantheon in this movie. And that we knew that there was a promise that was made in 1983, you know, that there is another, and that it's Leia. And I had remembered that from my childhood, and I always wished that I could see Leia as a Jedi. And so when we came into this movie, we didn't have Carrie. And the problem of this movie was, how do we finish Leia's arc without actually having Leia? And that's when we came up with the story that someone would come along who would pick up Leia's saber and would finish her Jedi journey for her. And so every day, whenever all the bells and whistles were happening, cast of thousands, Jordan, the set, we would say, how do we tell the story of the 2 twins, the promise of the 2 twins being fulfilled, which are Luke and Leia?
I think the last thing, we're going to wrap up now, but the last thing I want to ask you is, we have a surprise in this movie, and it's the appearance of Harrison Ford after many years of saying he was never coming back to Star Wars. You got him back for The Force Awakens. How did you get him back for this, and how did you approach him? What was the pitch?
I called him and I said, we want to have a scene in the film between Kylo Ren and his father. Would you do it? And he said, oh, okay. It's not more interesting than that. We had a meeting and we talked about what it would be. Harrison, who is one of the great people ever, and incredibly, thoughtful about everything that he does, was all he ever wants is to understand the utility of the character. What is my role? So it was about sitting with him and explaining what it was that we, what our intention was, and we talked about it for quite a while. I sent him the pages. He said he got it, and he really, and then of course, as you can see, he was wonderful. So to have him be in that scene, to have Kylo to get to dramatize the thing that he had been playing in some form and afraid of, and not open to, the thing that was haunting him, that he was sort of suppressing and rejecting, which was kind of really dealing with what he had done in a way, which was one of the reasons why I think in 8, again, embracing completely what Ryan had written, the idea of kill the past. You know, why do you think he wants to kill the past? It's like this thing that is haunting him. So the idea that he wants to reject that thing, and it's not until he's shown compassion by Ray that that he's allowed or allows himself to have that conversation, which of course is a thing that he's doing in his mind, but it's the thing that you know, will crush him. And the idea that he knows the spirit of his father would give him permission and encouragement to go to the light side.
You talked about in the first movie about the emotion of seeing Harrison, you know, back as the character. What was it like seeing him for the last time as the character?
Well, it was incredibly surreal because, you know, he and I both, first of all, this is what was strange. You know, when we were doing Force Awakens, I still can't imagine what it would be like to come back, you know, at that point, nearly 40 years later, and wear a costume and play a character again. I just think it's insane for all of them, not just for Harrison. And it was weird to come to be on a Star Wars set and to share with Harrison the feeling of, I never thought I'd be back here doing this. Of course, you know, what his experience was far, you know, greater than mine in every way. But it was beautiful having him there with Adam. The two of them always had a great sort of spark, and they somehow gave each other permission, not literally before the scene, but just their nature, to be open and be so vulnerable, and to see two characters that are these traditionally pretty tough guys be so vulnerable, to me speaks to the beauty of what Star Wars has always been, is it shows people, you know, on this screen, you know, in a way that touches people all around the world, that you can be, you know, a princess, and we take it for granted, maybe some of us, but like, no one had ever seen a princess like Leia. Princesses don't behave that way. To have a, you know, a woman be that forthright, that tough, that decisive, the smartest one in the room always, you know, to see men be vulnerable with each other. You know, Star Wars was always the story of the underdog, and this inclusive sort of world where anyone, organic or synthetic, male, female, doesn't matter what your race or species, you know, everyone sort of, it's a you know, an equal opportunity place. So I just love having these two men not behaving in a way that you'd necessarily expect to see either of them. And of course, having Han get to sort of pay off the I know with his son was incredibly touching.
I thought that was very touching too, very touching. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for sticking around. The makers of Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker.
Thank you.